Today's been a fantastic opportunity to come out and talk to delegates whose jobs and communities are under threat by the government's proposal to sell the Western Power network. Now, we've engaged independent expert economic modellers to run the figures over what the government is proposing, using their own data, the government's own budget papers, as well as the annual reports, etc., that come out from the business itself. And it's been very interesting in terms of what the modelling has revealed is that economically, selling Western Power does not stack up at all. This is a cash-generating asset that returns millions to the government every year that can be spent on providing services such as schools and hospitals. And if that is sold for a short-term cash grab, that would only equal about 6 or 7 years worth of continued public ownership. We know that if the electricity networks are sold, prices are going to go up and services are going to go down. What this modelling has revealed is that also it doesn't stack up when you look at the economics either. So when we heard that the Premier was saying that Western Power would be worth about $15 billion, part of the independent modelling that we had undertaken was to actually interrogate that and try and verify whether that was actually an accurate valuation. And what we found is that that is absolutely at the high end. It would be almost amazing if Western Power was going to be sold for $15 billion. So the government has been going around putting a headline figure on it that is very, very generous. And what they haven't been saying is that Western Power actually carries $7.2 billion worth of debt. So they haven't mentioned that publicly at all. What we would expect and what the modelling has revealed is that a sale price of around $10 to $11 million would be probably middle of the road. And once you subtract $7.2 billion worth of debt that's currently sitting there, that doesn't leave you with much at all, especially for a business that is already giving about $500 million back to the state government every year. It's about $514 million net proceeds back to the government last financial year, and that will only go up in the future.
Yeah, look, we're obviously opposed to the privatisation of publicly owned assets simply because time and time again it's shown historically that the privatisation of these types of assets doesn't work. It has devastating effects, not only through job losses, but reliability, security, and then also what it does to communities in regional and rural areas. It just devastates them. You take significant infrastructure out of those types of communities, and then you have an immediate impact on health, education, the local emergency services, because they're not getting funded at the same level they were if the community no longer exists in the same format that it used to prior to an asset sale. Victoria and South Australia have got some of the highest electricity prices in Australia. And the fact of the matter is the Victorian bushfires, you don't have to look any further than that. In 2009, there was over 120 people killed. When they did the Royal Commission, one of the things that they found was that they didn't inspect the assets, and it was an electrical apparatus that failed that caused some of those fires. And that's simply because those private companies aren't investing into the network, and when they don't invest into the network, we have catastrophic effects, which we've seen. And the private companies are all about interested in generating profits to their shareholders. When you look at a government-owned corporation, it's owned by the taxpayers, it's owned by us, we're the shareholders. So we've got an opportunity every election, whether it be 3 or 4 year cycles, depending whether it's federal or state, to actually vote people out if they're not doing the right thing and looking after us. But when we privatise assets of such a significant nature, we don't have a say. So average mums and dads around this country, when it's sold off, don't have a say. So obviously we've seen a significant push right around the country about asset sales. So Queensland tried it, New South Wales is going through a process now, WA through the Barnett government's trying to flog off these profitable assets, but it's all been driven by the federal government. The federal government, if re-elected, Malcolm Turnbull's government re-elected, they've set aside $7 billion in funds to basically blackmail state and territories into selling off their profitable assets. And what I mean by that is the federal government won't put funds into rail, road, education, health, all of these sorts of infrastructure type projects unless the state government or territory governments actually commit to selling off some of these public assets. So we're using taxpayers' money to blackmail state and territory governments to sell off these profitable assets, which is going to really hit the consumers, which is going to hit the taxpayers, hit the mums and dads of Australia. One of the most important things that the community can do is just educate themselves. actually have a close look, because it's not hard to work this out. When you've got a company, like in Western Australia, that's $300 million a year is injected back into the state economy. In Queensland, billions of dollars are injected back into the state economy. That goes to educating our kids. That goes to health. That goes to a whole range of other issues that taxpayers don't have to front up more for. So if they educate them about this process, they'll understand. It's not you don't have to be an economist to work it out. You've got an asset that's increasingly getting more and more profits every year, driven back into state revenue. You take that away, 5, 6, 10 years' time, where do they get that money from? Where does the government get that money from to continue to provide the services? And ultimately, like I said before, we are taxpayers, we are shareholders of these government-owned corporations, and we've got an opportunity to make sure the government stands up and looks after all of us. And that's the best part about keeping these assets in public ownership, is the fact that if the government isn't doing the right thing by consumers, if the government isn't doing things right by our members, then we've got an opportunity to take it to the ballot box and send a clear message to the government. And on this occasion, the Barnett government is out of touch. They've made a massive mistake by trying to privatise the electricity industry in Western Australia, and hopefully it comes back and bites them on the arse.
Hi, I'm Paul Lister from the New South Wales branch, and I played a role in running the Stop the Sell-Off campaign against privatisation and the New South Wales Bear government in New South Wales. Well, in New South Wales, we've been fighting privatisation for 20 years. We had 2 wins in 1999 and 2007, and then we were faced with privatisation in 2013 from the Liberal National Government. And we went out there and activated our members and ran a campaign against the LNP government and their agenda of privatisation. It's really important that members get engaged with this campaign, have a crack. You only get one chance at stopping this. It's so important for workers, it's important for their families, it's important for the state. Get out there and have a go. Well, our campaign, and any campaign that unions run, there's always different elements to that. There'll be political strategies, there'll be an air war through paid advertising and free media. But the most important element in any campaign is the grassroots. And that's where members are so important. This and other campaigns in the future will be won and lost on members getting out there and having a go and making a difference to the outcome of elections and policy that governments decide to implement. This is your opportunity. It's your opportunity to go out there and stand up for what you believe is right. The people of Western Australia don't want the asset that they own sold off. Everybody knows that power privatisation means a couple of things. It means prices will go up, it means service will go down, and it means the state will be worse off. When you've got a state government that's squandered money like the one that you've got now, what are they going to do with the proceeds of privatisation? This is an asset paid for by the people of Western Australia. We've got to stand up and protect it.
Stuart Trail, Electricity Supply Industry Organiser from Queensland. We kicked off Not For Sale campaign a few years ago, and it was under a Labor government that was privatising major assets. What that led to is a significant defeat of the Labor government, which ended up with the LNP having an overwhelming majority of the Queensland Parliament. Labor only had 7 seats, so there was a very low starting base for us to try and topple a government that was clear on privatisation. We had regional depots, 33 remote depots throughout Queensland were up for closure under the LNP. We had remote services such as over 30 communities throughout the Cape and Torres Straits. We're all up for privatisation, as well as our transmission and distribution corporations were all up for sale. We had 3 expired agreements where they were coming after employment security, hard-fought protections around safety, and also things like minimum apprentice numbers. So very clear message, exactly the same message as has happened in New South Wales, Victoria, and also South Australia prior to privatisation. So it was clear. We had to run a campaign and we had to beat a government with the greatest majority that this country's ever seen. The only way we did it was through grassroots support from our members, their family and the community at large. So we had to get out right across Queensland, go after them in some of their own seats, keep the Conservative MPs in their own backyard, answering questions of their constituents, and also targeting enough seats to topple the government. So we had a couple of by-elections where we had significant wins there with swings of 17 and 19%, and then we had the general election in January 2015 Massive result. It was only as a result of grassroots action right across the state over a number of years, and that was relentless. Our members were out day in, day out, week in, week out for a number of years, campaigning to save their assets, to save their jobs, to save their workplaces, to save their communities, and thankfully we did it. So it is an important message, and the message to our comrades in Western Australia is to get out there, because if you don't fight in this stuff, you are going to lose, because Conservatives will sell your industry, they will sell it to offshore buyers, the profits will go overseas, the jobs will disappear out of your communities in the future, job opportunities for our kids will disappear along with that. So have a crack, and you've got the full support of the ETU Queensland and Northern Territory branch. What we had in Queensland is that the government does community cabinet. So whether it was Cooktown, whether it was Thursday Island in the Torres Straits, whether it was Charleville, whether it was Emerald, throughout regional Queensland through to the cities, there was ETU members and their families campaigning against asset sales wherever they went. We also had the government spend a significant amount of money. They said 6 million, that jumped up to 80 million when the real costs were exposed, through strong choices where the Treasurer went around the state. I think he did 19 community forums. We were at every single one of them. He could not go anywhere without seeing us, and he even mentions us in Parliament, saying that he was seeing more of us by the end of that than his wife. So it's important to be relentless. It's important to stay in your face, because ultimately they're the ones selling the assets to their big business mates, and in all likelihood to offshore Liberal Party donors. And it is the communities they're selling out, it's the jobs, it's the people of this state, the ones that are the voters. They've got a real opportunity to turf them. If you have enough conversations right across the whole state, you can do this. And yeah, your WA is very similar as far as distance and size compared to Queensland, and you can do it if you have the support of your rank and file members, and it's up to them. We made it clear in Queensland, don't make excuses was our message, and don't leave it to others. It's easy to leave it to somebody else in your depot. Get off your backsides and do it yourself, because it's ultimately your job, your livelihood, your family and your community.
Yeah, Peter Simpson, State Secretary, Electrical Trades Union in Queensland. We ran the not for sale campaign against the Newman government over privatisation and won, so I'm pretty happy about that. We kicked it off in 2012. We knew they were going to privatise. We spent a lot of time doing market research and stuff that we've never done before. It took us out of our comfort zone. We went out and started doing focus groups and stuff that unions don't, well, we've never done anyway. And it worked. It actually works a treat. When you hear what the public want rather than what you think they want, it makes a big difference. There's some harebrained strategies, to be honest, but they were all good. All these sort of campaigns, you want to get media, you want to get free media. So just doing the same boring stuff and putting a press release out doesn't always work. So pulling a stunt, going to a community cabinet meeting and standing out the front and harassing them, not physically harassing, but verbally harassing the bloody participants and letting them know you're there, and to the stage where they sneak in the back door like rats. It was just a good campaign, and we built some really good friendships with other community groups like pensioners and Indigenous community. It was just great. It was a great campaign. You can do it is the message. We pulled off something I never would have dreamed of doing 3 years ago. And you guys, the polling's looking okay at this stage. You can make it even better if you get off your backsides and get out and get involved in this campaign, because you will win government and you will change the course of history. And that's the beauty of the campaign. When you're out campaigning, and they're out in the western areas in particular, or the far north, where they don't expect anyone to be, the beauty of our membership, which is the same as the West Australian membership, we've got members in every regional area. So just convincing the guys to go out, even just stand on the side of the road with a sign to let them know that we're there, and let them know that we're going to oppose them right up to the election. It's a good mind message, and it's a good message for our campaign and for the union in general, I reckon. Good luck. Let's hope you get it over the line. I'm pretty confident you will, and well done. It's a good campaign so far.
My name is Ben Jewell. I'm the power industry organiser for the ETU CPU in South Australia. It was quite a while ago that we had ours. We got privatised in 2000, so 16 years ago. It was very hard to get traction, and apathy was our biggest enemy in the campaign. The flow-on effect from the ground level is depots closing, jobs lost. You turn into a number, you're not part of the family anymore. And the professional managers that come through that strictly look at KPIs, they don't care about you, they don't care about your family, they care about profit and money going back to the shareholders. I think there's around 20 depots closed, and all those depots were sold. Under the lease, they were allowed to sell the depots, they weren't allowed to sell the infrastructure. So the lease is on the infrastructure, but the depots were part of a sale pretty much. Before the privatisation, it went from 700-ish power workers to 300-ish, and now it's back up to about 400, but they're still not employing apprentices the way they should be. There was 10 years where they did not employ an apprentice. So even when they did start employing apprentices again, it was like 8 per year for the 400 tradesmen they had. So they were very, very scattered. This fight is very real. You need to fight now, because if it does get done, there's no way back. That is it. It is over.